Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
But I definitely want to get into Edgar Wright's new movie, Last Night in Soho, which has a mixed response so far. Sabrina is the only one of us that has seen it, so I want to hear your thoughts, Sabrina.
Definitely. I mean, it's been a minute since I've seen it. I did go to a screening about a week or so before it came out.
About a week ago?
About a week ago? No,
it's you know what I'm talking about, RB3. You don't know what I'm talking about, RB3?
Song?
Your face.
Yeah. I just said it. Nobody listens to me. I literally just did the reference in the song. Oh my God. Anyways.
You're supposed to do it like him, bro.
She did it like
him. I did.
Okay.
She did her best.
She did her best.
I
thought it was great.
Anyways, thank you so much. Last Night in Soho. I think this one is really interesting, especially in terms of like Edgar Wright's filmography. This is the first time that he actually has like a story centered around women. And Christy Wilson Carnes, who did 1917 and who's doing the next film with Taika, writing that one, she co-wrote this with him. And I find that to be kind of essential when telling a story like this, because at its core, and this is going to be non-spoiler since the guys on here like haven't seen it, but basically just highlights the exploitation of women throughout history and still in present day. Not to get into spoilers or anything, but like with our main character, who's played by Thomasin McKenzie, we're kind of introduced to this person who is super passionate. She's going to study fashion and pursue a career in that sense. She's moving from like a small town to a big city. This is a completely new environment for her. And she also has like a sixth sense. This film's a little messy in its execution. I feel like it could have been cleaned up just a little bit more. And there's a ton of moving parts. But as we see in the trailer, she has this connection to Anya Taylor-Joy Sandy, who lived in the 60s in London. And she's able to kind of unravel this mystery. And it definitely takes a toll on her and her mental health. And I just found it to be so interesting. And I really, really, really enjoyed this. I do understand why some people could kind of come out of this feeling like a little bit like salty about it and not necessarily warmed up to the story, because since it's messy, there's a few moments that if you don't necessarily vibe with that particular thing, then it's just not going to continue to work for you, especially when we get to the end of the second act, beginning of the third. I loved it. I thought it was relatively deep. I think it's cool to see Edgar Wright take on this, of course, in terms of his style and visuals. That all shines through. I think it's spectacular. In my opinion, it's one of his most like sophisticated pieces of work. And I can tell how much he genuinely cares about the characters of Eloise and Sandy. And I think that's a really important thing when telling a story like this. So it felt authentic. I resonated a lot with like both characters. And I feel like that's another thing that like people need to kind of like form some form of connection. But I feel like most women that watch this can definitely see, like we've talked about Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and how every man in that movie is kind of like gross. You know, we're seeing this through the lens of like a teenage girl. And that's a similar case with this one. Not every man in the story is gross at all, but like you see this kind of life, moving to a city life, through the eyes of Eloise. And it's fascinating because like the second she rolls into London, her taxi driver immediately starts like hitting on her, and she has to get out of like the cab and like wait at a corner store for him to leave this area because she doesn't want him to take her home. And like all of us have kind of experienced something like that, whether it's like a creepy Uber driver or no matter what it is. So I really appreciated so many different aspects of this film, and it completely worked with me. I think we got definitely that like 70s, 60s, like psychological horror vibes from it, a little bit of like Argento, De Palma, but still with Edgar Wright's use like of his direction and his style. I think he definitely made it his own. And another thing that I was really kind of like entranced by as I was watching this is the choreography and the camera work that he did in the dream sequences. I think that's when he truly excelled. But overall, I love the story. I think it's something that is kind of important to show, even though I don't think 100% of it was like executed well. And there is a like I don't want to say like a twist. I'm on screen by myself. Okay. There is a twist that if you don't like it, it's going to probably like ruin the ending for the movie. So that's why I'm not surprised to see that this does have kind of a divisive reception.
I think that is the only thing I've heard about this movie, Sabrina. And thank you for that review, by the way. You were on screen the whole time. But you killed that. You killed that. I did hear about that there's a twist in the movie and that most people either respond to it or don't. I feel like most people said they did not respond to it. I don't want to generalize, but that's just what I saw on my Twitter feed and in articles. But I feel like that twist worked for you.
It did. And I was actually having a conversation with a friend yesterday who was talking about why the twist didn't work for him and the way that he looked at it. And again, not getting into spoilers, but to me, I think focusing on that idea of like nostalgia and the exploitation of women and like looking back at different periods of time or whatever and saying like, oh, I wish I lived in this moment, or I wish I had this life, and kind of romanticizing any ideas. This shows like the negative effects that has, especially since our main character does completely romanticize the 60s. Like right at the beginning, she's listening to like 60s roots rock, like British invasion rock on her Beats headphones. And it's just like super ironic. And I feel like that comes across the screen very well. But that's what they were saying. They were saying that like, I don't know, the twist kind of ruined all those ideas and the ideas of the exploitation of women to them. But to me, I think it kind of enhanced it a little bit because especially when we look at history and we look at sometimes the way society puts a specific lens on women, there's only so much you can do as you're like beaten down in certain ways and you can never do anything right. It's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you act this way, you're labeled as like a slut. But if you act this other way, you're labeled as a prude. And there's like rarely ever any middle ground. So I feel like this is just an exaggerated version of something like that.
Interesting, for sure, especially because it was written by a woman and written by an Irish woman, which I guess adds a little bit to it because of the music and because of the era. Maybe that'll add a little bit to it as well. I'm definitely curious. I still think I might check it out for sure. RB3, are you going to be checking this one out?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm super excited about it. Edgar Wright is dope. And some people who don't really love Baby Driver, I don't really love Baby Driver. And people.
Oh yeah, that's you. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, we had like a whole discussion about it on the ride to Comic-Con with Brian. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Man, our Comic-Con rides were just like funny stuff, man. We talked about, I gave you my Spider-Man conspiracy theories on one of them. You put me on a Black Mirror way back before it was even like popular. But in terms of this one, I heard people who don't really love like Baby Driver and don't really love a lot of Edgar Wright's other original work say that, not original work, but I guess outside of the Nick Frost and Simon Pegg collapse, they say that this is probably his best one out of that, even better than Scott Pilgrim, which even I like Scott Pilgrim a whole lot. So.
I love Scott Pilgrim, yeah.
So I'm really...
What's your favorite Shaun of the Dead movie, guys? Shaun of the Dead movie. Edgar Wright movie. I'm sorry.
Trilogy? Oh, okay. I would say Last Night in Soho now.
Oh wow!
Wow!
And that's the thing, Matthew Farrelly, someone who's one of our subscribers, friend of the show. He loves Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is one of his favorite filmmakers of all time, and he put Last Night in Soho dead last. Oh, so wow. I don't know, because I like Edgar Wright. He's kind of hit or miss for me, but I always appreciate what he brings to every single film, even though I don't necessarily go to revisit it that often. I liked Baby Driver. This one, I have to do one more watch, but I think it's one of my favorites of the year. I think it's definitely somewhere like in my top 5. Right now, I think on Letterboxd, I have it as my number 1. So it might hold that spot after I give another rewatch.
RB3, what's your favorite?
Edgar Wright film?
Yeah.
It might honestly be Scott Pilgrim. Or if not that, or Shaun of the Dead, but it might be Scott Pilgrim, honestly.
Scott Pilgrim is so good. It ages like even like better. I love it. Well, I mean, certain moments, no, but just like how like out there it is. I remember watching it for the first time in like just absolutely loving it. And this one's kind of like the same thing for me. I think this is really ambitious for Edgar Wright's filmography. And I think he's definitely doing something that's completely out of his element. I mean, again, finally, like not finally, because of course any filmmaker could tell the stories that they want, but like having women as their protagonists. Like I appreciated the story he was telling. And I know it doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you're right, Sabrina. I guess I haven't caught on. I think I've heard that once before, people or someone criticizing the fact that the way he portrays women isn't exactly the most unique or original in past films, specifically maybe Shaun of the Dead. But I definitely feel like maybe this is him kind of acknowledging that for sure with this film. I'm going to say Hot Fuzz, by the way. I think we did this all the way back in the early days of RE3 when we did our Edgar Wright episode 4. Yeah, Edgar Wright, The Meaning Of. But I said Hot Fuzz. I'm stand by it. Hot Fuzz for sure.
For you, only one can remain. It's either me or you. Only one can remain. It's either me or you. Take you out the equation. It's either me or you. You